The piano in the East Wing hadn't been touched in 14 months. Dust coated the black lacquered surface like ash from a funeral pyre. William Smith stood in the doorway of the music room, Scotch glass sweating condensation onto his palm, watching three small figures sit motionless on the velvet sofa across from the instrument. Crystal, Brooke, and Phoebe. 5 years old. Identical faces with their mother's green eyes and his dark hair. Beautiful, silent, and so utterly broken that every specialist in New York had walked away shaking their heads. The little girl knocked on the window of the most dangerous man in New York, and he'd opened the door. But these three? They'd closed every door, every window, every possible entrance to the world that had stolen their mother. Welcome to Redemption Through Shadows, where the most powerful men discover that true strength isn't found in violence. It's found in the courage to kneel before the people they love and admit they're lost. If this story already has your heart in a vice grip, hit that subscribe button and smash the like to support narratives that'll wreck you in the best way. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We read every single one. Now let's see how one man's empire crumbled because he forgot that some fortresses are meant to fall. William took a slow sip of 18-year-old scotch that tasted like nothing. Everything tasted like nothing now. The city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows glittered with January snow. But inside this mansion, his fortress, his kingdom, there was only the oppressive weight of silence. 14 months ago, Marianne had been laughing in this very room, playing Chopin for the girls while they danced in their matching pink tutus, shrieking with joy. The memory was a knife that never dulled. Then Konstantin Volkov's men had sent a message, a territorial dispute over the Brooklyn docks. They'd chosen the cruelest possible method, a car bomb outside the girls' ballet studio. Marianne had been picking them up early. The blast killed her instantly. The girls, still inside waiting, had watched through the window as their mother's car became an inferno. They hadn't spoken since. Not a word. Not a scream. Not even a whimper in their sleep. And William knew they had nightmares, because he'd find them rigid in their beds, eyes wide open, tears streaming silently down their small faces. He'd hired everyone. Dr. Rebecca Yun, the child psychologist who'd rehabilitated kids from war zones. Dr. Kovac, the neurolinguistic specialist from Vienna. Play therapists, art therapists, a woman from Boston who used horses for God's sake. They'd trooped through this mansion one after another, armed with degrees and theories and gentle voices. The girls had stared through all of them like they were ghosts. William set the scotch down on the marble side table with a sharp click. Crystal's eyes flickered toward the sound, the only acknowledgement that she'd heard. She sat, between her sisters, hands folded in her lap, wearing the yellow dress Marianne had bought her. All three girls still wore clothes their mother had chosen. They refused anything new. "Dinner's ready," William said, his voice rough from disuse. He didn't talk much anymore either. Who was there to talk to? 3 pairs of green eyes looked at him. Empty. Accusing, maybe, though he couldn't be sure. Did they blame him? They should. Volkov had targeted Marianne because of him. Because William had refused to yield the docks. Because in this world, you showed weakness, and you died. So he'd shown strength. And his wife had died instead. The girls slid off the sofa in unison, a synchronized movement they'd developed since the incident. They did everything together now. Ate together, bathed together, slept in the same bed even though they each had their own rooms. Mrs. Kowalski, the housekeeper, said they were afraid of being separated. William followed them down the hall toward the dining room, maintaining the 10-foot distance they seemed to require. If he got closer, they'd stop walking. If he reached for them, they'd go rigid. Dr. Yun had said it was a trauma response, hypervigilance, frozen fear masked as calm. He was their father, and they looked at him like he was the threat. The dining room was obscenely large for 4 people. 5, until recently. Now just him and 3 silent children sitting at one end of a table that could seat 20. Mrs. Kowalski brought out plates of chicken and roasted vegetables. The girls ate mechanically, never looking up, never making a sound. William watched them and felt the fury rising in his chest. Not at them. Never at them. At himself. At Volkov. At the universe that had decided his daughters should pay for his sins. Crystal, he said quietly. The oldest by 4 minutes. She'd always been the brave one. The one who spoke for all 3. Did you draw anything today? Nothing. She cut her chicken into precise pieces. The knife, scraping against porcelain. Brooke? Phoebe? The twins didn't even blink. Just chewed, swallowed, existing in some faraway place he couldn't reach. Dr. Yun's last words echoed in his mind. Mr. Smith, I've exhausted every therapeutic avenue I know. Selective mutism stemming from acute trauma in triplets is exceptionally rare. They've created their own world where language doesn't exist, because language existed when their mother died. Speaking means acknowledging reality. Silence means they can pretend she's just elsewhere. I'm sorry. I don't think I can help them. $20,000 for that conclusion. After dinner, the girls returned to the music room. They always did. They'd sit on that sofa until exactly 8 o'clock, staring at the piano their mother used to play. Then they'd go upstairs in silent formation and put themselves to bed. William poured another scotch in his study and tried to focus on the ledgers spread across his desk. The Brooklyn docks were finally secured. Volkov had retreated to Brighton Beach after losing 3 key lieutenants. The territory war was over. William had won. It felt like the emptiest victory in history. His phone buzzed. Marco, his underboss. Boss, we need you at the warehouse. Shipment issue. William typed back one-handed. Handle it. It's the Italians. They want to renegotiate percentages. Need your call. He should go. In the old days, before, he would have been there already, reading the room, making the decision that, kept everyone in line. But the old days were when Marianne handled everything here. When he could leave knowing his girls were safe, happy, talking. Now they were here, silent and haunted. And he was here, useless and watching. Tomorrow, he typed. Not tonight. Marco didn't respond. William could practically feel the concern through the screen. The boss who didn't show up was a boss losing control. But what did control matter if he couldn't even get his own daughters to say good morning? He climbed the stairs at 8:15 and stood outside their shared bedroom. The door was cracked open. They couldn't sleep with it fully closed, another trauma response. Through the gap, he could see all 3 of them tucked into Phoebe's bed, the same worn, stuffed animals clutched to their chests. Mr. Whiskers the cat, Daisy the bunny, Buttons the bear. Marianne had won those at a carnival 2 summers ago. Good night, William whispered. Crystal's eyes were open. She stared at the ceiling, unblinking. He pulled the door almost closed and stood in the hallway, forehead pressed against the wall, breathing through the tightness in his chest that never fully went away. Downstairs, Mrs. Kowalski was cleaning the kitchen. She'd been with the family for 8 years, had helped Marianne through the girl's colicky infancy, had wept at the funeral. Mr. Smith, she said when he appeared in the doorway. I was going to mention, my niece is looking for work. She's had a hard time finding something steady. William barely heard her. She's a lovely girl. Very responsible. I thought perhaps you might need extra help around the house. With the girls. He focused on her then. Mrs. Kowalski was 63, her back giving her trouble on the stairs. She'd never complained, but he'd noticed her wincing. What kind of work does she do? Anything, really. She's educated. Studied music at the Manhattan Conservatory for 2 years before. Mrs. Kowalski hesitated. Before her. Father passed. She lost her scholarship. Now she takes whatever she can get. Cleaning, tutoring, retail. Music. The words snagged something in William's mind. The piano, untouched. Marianne's voice singing lullabies. She's worked with children? Oh, yes. She nannied for a family in Connecticut last year. Very good with little ones. William looked toward the stairs, toward the second floor where his daughters slept in traumatized silence. What did he have to lose? Tell her to come by tomorrow. Afternoon, 2:00. Mrs. Kowalski's face brightened. Oh, Mr. Smith, thank you. Jade will be so grateful. It's a trial, William interrupted. If it doesn't work, she's gone. Of course, of course. He left her in the kitchen and returned to his study, to the ledgers he wouldn't read and the scotch that wouldn't help. Outside, snow fell on New York in silent white curtains, burying the city under inches of cold forgetting. Inside, 3 little girls slept without dreaming, and their father sat awake wondering if silence was something you could die from. Slowly, one quiet day at a time, Jade Wilson stood outside the Smith mansion at exactly 1:58 p.m., smoothing her coat for the 3rd time and trying not to look as desperate as she felt. The place was massive. 3 stories of pale stone and huge windows, set back from the street behind iron gates and a circular driveway. Old money. Serious money. The kind of money that didn't advertise itself with gaudy columns but simply existed, solid and unmovable as a mountain. Her aunt had texted that morning. Be polite. Be professional. Mr. Smith is very private. Don't ask personal questions. Jade had wanted to ask what kind of business Mr. Smith was in, but her aunt's tone made it clear that curiosity wasn't welcome. Fine. She wasn't in a position to be picky. Her rent was 3 weeks overdue, and the bodega where she'd been stocking shelves had cut her hours to nothing. She rang the bell. The woman who answered was familiar, Aunt Kowalski, though Jade hadn't seen her in 2 years. The older woman's face creased into a warm smile. Jade, darling, come in, come in. The foyer was all marble and dark wood, a chandelier overhead that probably cost more than Jade's entire education. Everything was pristine, almost sterile. No clutter. No family photos on the walls. Just expensive emptiness. Mr. Smith is in his study, her aunt said, leading her down a hall. He'll want to meet you first. Remember, he's had a difficult time recently. Be gentle. Jade nodded, nerves twisting in her stomach. She needed this job. Whatever it was. The study door was ajar. Her aunt knocked softly, then pushed it open. The man behind the desk didn't look up immediately. He was signing something, dark head bent over paperwork, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. When he finally raised his eyes, Jade felt the air shift. He was younger than she'd expected, late 30s maybe, handsome in a harsh way, sharp jawline, dark, eyes that assessed her with unnerving focus, the kind of face that didn't smile often. There was something coiled about him, like a spring wound too tight. Mr. Smith, this is my niece, Jade Wilson. William Smith stood, and Jade realized he was tall, easily over 6 feet. He didn't offer his hand. Miss Wilson. His voice was low, controlled. Mrs. Kowalski mentioned you're looking for work. Yes, sir. Keep it professional. Don't babble. I'm available for whatever you need. Housekeeping. Errands. Childcare. I have 3 daughters, he interrupted. They're 5. They don't speak. Jade blinked. I'm sorry? They haven't spoken in 14 months. Selective mutism following a traumatic event. He said it flatly, like reading a medical report. Mrs. Kowalski is getting older. I need someone younger to help manage the household and be present. The girls require supervision. Jade's mind raced. 3 silent 5-year-olds. Trauma. What happened to them? But her aunt's warning echoed, "Don't ask personal questions." "I understand," Jade said carefully. "I have experience with children. I'm patient." "You studied music?" It wasn't a question. "Yes, piano and voice at Manhattan Conservatory. I didn't finish the program, but..." "Can you still play?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes." William was silent for a long moment, studying her with those unsettling dark eyes. Jade forced herself not to fidget. "The position pays $800 a week," he said finally. "Room and board included if you're willing to live on site. Hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. You'll assist Mrs. Kowalski with housekeeping and cooking, but your primary responsibility is the girls. Keep them safe. Keep them occupied." $800 a week. Jade's heart jumped. That was more than she'd made in a month at the bodega. "I'll also require discretion," William continued. "What happens in this house stays in this house. No social media, no gossip, no questions about my business. Are we clear?" There was an edge to that last part. A warning. Jade nodded quickly. "Crystal clear, Mr. Smith. You start tomorrow, 7 a.m. He sat back down, attention already returning to his paperwork. The meeting was over. Her aunt ushered her out, squeezing her arm excitedly in the hallway. "He liked you. He never decides that fast." Jade smiled, but unease flickered in her chest. Something about William Smith's eyes, the emptiness in them, the tightly leashed control, made her think of men who'd seen too much, done too much. "What kind of business are you in, Mr. Smith?" She didn't ask. The next morning, Jade arrived at 6:55 a.m. with a duffel bag of clothes and her sheet music portfolio. Her aunt met her at the door, already in her apron. "The girls are still sleeping. Mr. Smith leaves at 7:30 for work. Breakfast is at 8. She led Jade up the stairs to a small but comfortable bedroom on the 2nd floor. "This is yours. Bathrooms across the hall. Get settled, then come down and I'll show you the routine." The room had a single bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the back garden. Simple, clean. 1,000 times better than her studio apartment with the broken heater. Jade unpacked quickly, then headed downstairs. The kitchen was enormous. Marble counters, professional-grade appliances, a breakfast nook with bay windows. Her aunt was preparing oatmeal and slicing fruit. "The girls eat at 8, she said. "They're very particular. Same bowls. Every day. Same spoons. Don't try to change anything. It upsets them." "Do they communicate at all?" Her aunt's expression softened with sadness. "They understand everything. They'll nod or shake their heads if you ask yes or no questions. But mostly they just exist. Poor little things." At precisely 8 a.m., 3 small figures appeared in the doorway. Jade's breath caught. They were beautiful. Identical, with dark hair in neat braids and matching green eyes. They wore different colored dresses. Yellow, blue, pink. But their expressions were exactly the same. Blank, watchful, wary. "Good morning, girls," her aunt said cheerfully. "This is Miss Jade. She's going to be helping me take care of you." 3 pairs of eyes locked onto Jade. She felt pinned by their stares, examined and judged by creatures far older than 5. She crouched down slowly, getting to their level. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Jade. It's nice to meet you." Nothing. Not even a blink. "That's Crystal in yellow," her aunt said. "Brooke in blue, Phoebe in pink. The girls moved to the table in synchronized silence, climbing onto their chairs. Her aunt placed bowls in front of them. Crystal got the one with the small chip on the rim, Brooke the one with the faded flower pattern, Phoebe the plain white one. They ate mechanically, never looking at each other, never making a sound. Jade felt her chest tighten. "What did you see? What broke you so completely?" After breakfast, the girls went to the music room. Jade followed, keeping her distance, watching as they sat on the velvet sofa and stared at the dust-covered piano. "They do this every day," her aunt whispered. "Sit there for hours. Dr. Yun thought it was because their mother used to play for them. But they won't let anyone touch it." Jade studied the piano. A beautiful instrument. Steinway grand, probably worth $60,000. Abandoned. "Can I try something?" she asked. Her aunt hesitated. "Mr. Smith didn't say you couldn't." Jade walked slowly toward the piano bench. The girl's eyes tracked her movement, but they didn't react. She sat down carefully, opened the fallboard, and let her fingers rest on the keys. She didn't play yet. Just sat there, feeling the weight of their stares. Then, very softly, she began. Not a lullaby. Not anything obvious. Just a simple melody. Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1. Slow. Melancholy. Safe. The notes filled the room like water filling a glass. Jade didn't look at the girls. Didn't perform. She just played, letting the music exist without expectation. When she finished, silence returned. She closed the fallboard and stood. Crystal's hand was raised, just barely. Fingers extended toward the piano. Jade's heart stuttered. "Do you want me to play more?" she asked gently. Crystal's hand lowered, but her eyes, for just a second, weren't empty. William came home at 6:30 to find his daughters eating dinner without incident. Jade sat nearby, not at the table but in a chair by the window, reading. She stood when he entered. "Mr. Smith." He nodded, studying the scene. The girls were eating. That was normal, but something felt different. "How was today?" "Quiet," Jade said. "But good. They're lovely girls." He almost laughed. Lovely. They were ghosts. Mrs. Kowalski appeared from the kitchen. "Jade played piano for them this morning, just for a few minutes." William's jaw tightened. "I didn't authorize—" "They didn't object," Jade interrupted softly. "I was careful. If they'd shown any distress, I would have stopped immediately." He stared at her. This young woman with her worn coat and careful eyes, who'd been here less than 12 hours and was already breaking his unspoken rules. "Don't do it again without asking me first." "Of course. I'm sorry." She didn't sound sorry. She sounded like she thought he was wrong but was too polite to say it. William turned and left the room before he said something he'd regret. In his study, he poured scotch and tried to focus on the shipping manifest Marco had sent. But his mind kept circling back to the music room, to his daughters' faces when Mrs. Kowalski said Jade had played. They hadn't objected. 14 months of specialists, and not one of them had thought to just play the piano. He drained the scotch and poured another. Downstairs, Jade helped the girls into their pajamas, a process Mrs. Kowalski guided her through with whispered instructions about which drawer held which clothes, which toothbrush was whose. At 8 o'clock, the girls climbed into Phoebe's bed together. Jade stood in the doorway, her aunt beside her. "Good night," Jade said softly. Phoebe's eyes met hers, just for a second. Then she closed them. It wasn't much, but it was something. 3 weeks passed in careful, quiet routines. Jade learned the girls' patterns. They woke at 7, dressed in the colors that corresponded to their names. Crystal in yellows and golds, Brooke in blues, Phoebe in pinks and purples. They ate the same, breakfast every morning, oatmeal with blueberries, orange juice in the small cups with the cartoon elephants. After breakfast, they went to the music room, and Jade played. She'd asked William's permission after that first day, catching him in the hallway before he left for work. He'd stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. "You want to play piano? For children who don't speak." "Music is a language," Jade had said quietly. "Maybe it's one they still understand." He'd studied her for a long, unnerving moment. Then, "Fine, but if it upsets them, I'll stop immediately." He'd left without another word. So every morning Jade played. Nothing dramatic. Debussy, Chopin's nocturnes. Sometimes simpler things, folk songs, movie themes. She never forced it. If the girls stood and walked away, she stopped. If they stayed, she continued. Slowly, incrementally, they started staying longer. By the end of week 2, Phoebe had moved from the sofa to the floor, sitting cross-legged, 3 feet from the piano bench. Brooke followed the next day. Crystal remained on the sofa, but her eyes tracked Jade's hands on the keys. Jade never acknowledged the shift, just played, then stood and said, "That's all for today," and left the room. Mrs. Kowalski watched it all with tearful amazement. "I've never seen them like this. It's like they're waking up." But Jade was careful not to hope too much. Trauma didn't heal in 3 weeks. These girls had witnessed something unspeakable. Music might reach them, but it wouldn't fix them. Still, there were moments. Small, fragile moments that made Jade's chest ache. Like when Brooke brought her a drawing, a crayon sketch of a piano with a stick figure sitting at it. She didn't say anything, just placed it on Jade's lap and walked away. Or when Crystal, after a particularly gentle rendition of Claire de Lune, reached out and touched the piano keys. Just one note, middle C. She pressed it, listened to the sound fade, then pulled her hand back and returned to the sofa. Or when Phoebe fell asleep during an afternoon session, curled up on the rug, and didn't wake even when Jade stopped playing. Mrs. Kowalski had whispered, "She hasn't slept during the day since before." Jade had carefully draped a blanket over the little girl and let her rest. William watched it all from the shadows. He came home earlier now. Not because Marco didn't need him. His underboss had started making pointed comments about the boss being distracted, but because he couldn't stay away. He'd stand in the hallway outside the music room, hidden from view, and listen. Jade's playing was extraordinary. Not technically flawless. There were moments where she'd stumble over a difficult passage, restart, continue. But the emotion in it, the gentleness, like she was speaking directly to some wounded part of his daughters that he couldn't reach, and they were responding. He saw it in the way Phoebe's shoulders relaxed when the music started, in the way Brooke's fingers twitched, like she wanted to play too, in the way Crystal's face lost some of that terrible blank composure and became just sad. Openly, honestly sad. It was progress, and it terrified him, because Jade Wilson, with her second-hand coat and careful hands, was doing what 14 months of specialists couldn't. She was bringing his daughters back, and that meant he needed her. William Smith didn't need anyone. Needing people got them killed. On a Thursday evening in early February, Jade was cleaning up the music room when William appeared in the doorway. She startled. He was usually gone by this hour, locked in his study or out at one of his mysterious meetings. "Mr. Smith, I didn't realize you were home." "How long have you been playing piano?" he asked without preamble. Jade straightened, clutching the dust cloth. "Since I was 6. My father taught me. Mrs. Kowalski said he died. 2 years ago. Heart attack." She met his eyes. "I'm sorry. I know you value privacy. I don't mean to share personal—" "You're good," William interrupted. "At playing. You're very good." The compliment, if it was a compliment, hung awkwardly between them. "Thank you," Jade said finally. He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets, surveying the space like he was seeing it for the first time. "My wife used to play. Not as well as you, but the girls loved it." Jade's breath caught. This was the first time he'd mentioned his wife directly. "She had good taste," she said carefully, gesturing to the sheet music stacked on the piano's music desk. "Lots of romantic period composers. Chopin, Liszt. She said they made her feel things without having to explain them." The raw honesty in his voice made Jade's throat tighten. "Music does that," she said softly. "It's why I think maybe the girls are responding because it's safe. They don't have to talk. They can just feel." William's jaw worked. He was staring at the piano like it was a gravestone. "She died in front of them," he said, voice flat. "They watched her car explode." Jade's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. It was meant for me. A message from a rival. But Marianne was picking them up early from ballet. Wrong place, wrong time." He laughed bitterly. "Except it wasn't wrong. It was exactly right. They knew it would destroy me more than killing me would." Jade didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to that? "I'm so sorry," she whispered. William finally looked at her. Really looked. His eyes were black pits of grief and rage barely held in check. "Don't," he said. "Don't pity me. I don't need it." "I'm not," Jade swallowed. "I'm not pitying you, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry that happened to your family." He turned and walked out. Jade stood alone in the music room, hands shaking, heart racing. A car bomb. Those little girls had watched their mother die in an explosion. No wonder they couldn't speak. That night, Jade couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying William's words. A message from a rival. What kind of business required sending messages through murder? She thought of the way men in expensive suits sometimes came to the house, disappearing into William's study for hours. The way her aunt always made herself scarce during those meetings. The way William himself moved, coiled, alert, dangerous. Jade wasn't naive. She'd grown up in New York. She knew what organized crime looked like. And she was living in the house of a man who was almost certainly part of it. The smart thing would be to leave. Take her $800 a week and find another job, something safe and boring. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Phoebe's small hand reaching for the piano keys. Brooke's drawing. Crystal's fleeting, fragile eye contact. Those girls needed help. And for reasons Jade didn't fully understand, she wanted to be the one to help them. The breakthrough came on a rainy Saturday, afternoon in mid-February. The girls were in the music room as usual. Jade was playing a simple melody, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, in a minor key, slowed down until it sounded like a lullaby. Phoebe, sitting closest to the piano, started humming. Jade's hands faltered. She caught herself, kept playing, but her heart was pounding. Phoebe was humming. Soft, breathy, barely audible, but sound. Actual sound from her throat. Jade didn't react, didn't stop, didn't turn around. Just kept playing, keeping the melody simple and repetitive. And Phoebe kept humming. When the song ended, Jade slowly closed the fallboard and stood. She turned. Phoebe was staring at her, green eyes wide. "That was beautiful," Jade whispered. Phoebe's mouth opened, closed. No words came, but her eyes filled with tears. Jade knelt down, arms open but not reaching. "It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to say anything. Humming is perfect." Phoebe launched herself forward, crashing into Jade's chest with enough force to knock her back onto her heels. Small arms wrapped around her neck, desperate and tight. Jade held her. feeling the little body shake with silent sobs. Brooke stood from the floor, then Crystal from the sofa. They walked over, slow and uncertain, then pressed against Jade's sides. All three girls, clinging to her, crying without sound. Mrs. Kowalski stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Jade held them, rocking slightly, whispering, "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe." It was the first time any of them had initiated physical contact in 14 months. When William came home that evening, Mrs. Kowalski met him in the foyer, words tumbling out in a rush. She hummed Mr. Smith. Phoebe hummed. And then all three of them hugged her. They hugged her. I've never seen... William didn't wait for her to finish. He strode to the music room. Jade was sitting on the piano bench. The girls were on the floor in front of her, playing with wooden blocks. Actually playing, not just staring into space. Phoebe handed a block to Brooke. Brooke stacked it. Crystal adjusted the structure. Cooperative play. Dr. Yun had said cooperative play was a sign of healing, of trust returning. Jade looked up and saw him. She stood quickly. "Mr. Smith, I can explain." "Don't." His voice was rough. "Don't explain. Just keep doing whatever you're doing." He left before she could see his face crack. In his study, William closed the door, pressed his back against it, and let himself feel something he'd thought was dead. Hope. Word count, 848. The Bloco 04. By mid-March, the mansion felt different. Not happy. Happiness was still a distant concept in a house haunted by Marianne's ghost. But lighter. The oppressive silence had fractured, replaced by small sounds that William had forgotten existed. Humming. Footsteps that didn't drag. Occasional laughter. Breathless. Hesitant. But real. The girls still didn't speak. But they communicated. Phoebe hummed constantly now. Little melodies Jade taught her. Brooke had started using gestures, pointing, nodding enthusiastically, even shaking her head when she disagreed with something. Crystal remained the most reserved, but she'd begun leaving drawings on Jade's bed. Pictures of the four of them. 3 small figures and 1 taller one, always near a piano. William watched it unfold from his self-imposed distance. He came home earlier, stayed longer, found excuses to pass by the music room. But he didn't join them. Didn't try to insert himself into the fragile ecosystem Jade had built. Because he could see it clearly now. His daughters had bonded with her in a way they hadn't bonded with him since Marianne's death. And he didn't know whether to be grateful or devastated. On a Wednesday evening, William found Jade in the library, curled up in an armchair with a book. The girls were asleep upstairs, 8 o'clock, like clockwork. She looked up when he entered, immediately moving to stand. "Please," he said. "Don't." She settled back uncertainly. William poured himself scotch from the bar cart, then hesitated. "Do you drink?" "Sometimes." He poured a second glass and handed it to her. Jade took it, surprise flickering across her face. He sat in the chair opposite, studying her. She was younger than he'd initially thought. Mid-20s, maybe. Delicate features, brown hair she usually wore pulled back, hazel eyes that saw too much. She dressed plainly, jeans, simple sweaters, nothing flashy, like she was trying to disappear. "You've been here almost 2 months," William said. "Yes, sir." "The girls are different." Jade's fingers tightened on the glass. "They're healing. Slowly. Because of you." She shook her head. "Because they're ready. I'm just providing a safe space." "Don't diminish what you've done." His voice came out harsher than intended. He softened it. 14 months of specialists, Couldn't reach them. You did it in 8 weeks. Jade looked down at her scotch. Music was just the entry point. The real work is letting them process grief at their own pace. No pressure, no expectations. You sound like a therapist. I read a lot. After my father died, I needed to understand grief. Especially complicated grief. The kind that doesn't fit into neat stages. She glanced up. Your daughter's trauma is profound. Witnessing their mother's death at that age, in that way, it's not something they'll get over, but they can learn to carry it. And eventually, they'll talk when they're ready. William took a long drink. What if they're never ready? Then you love them anyway. Language isn't the only way to communicate. Jade's voice was gentle but firm. They know you love them, Mr. Smith, even if you think you're not showing it. He barked out a bitter laugh. Do they? Because from where I stand, they look at me like I'm a stranger. They look at you like they're afraid to love you too much, Jade corrected quietly. Because the last person they loved died. They're protecting themselves. The truth of it hit him like a fist to the sternum. Jade continued, softer now. But Crystal draws pictures of you. She puts you in the corner of every single one, standing apart, but present. She sees you, Mr. Smith. They all do. William set his glass down before he shattered it. I don't know how to be what they need. You're already what they need. You're their father. You're here. That's enough. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, Jade said. But it is. They sat in silence for a while. The library was warm, fire crackling in the hearth, snow falling softly outside the window. Why did you quit the conservatory? William asked eventually. Jade's expression shuddered. I told you. My father died. I couldn't afford. You had a scholarship. Partial scholarship. It covered tuition, not living expenses. After Dad's heart attack, I had medical bills, funeral costs. I worked 3 jobs trying to stay enrolled, but... She shrugged. Something had to give. Do you regret it? She considered that. I regret that I didn't get to finish, but I don't regret the choice. My father raised me alone after my mom left. He gave up everything for me. The least I could do was handle his death with dignity. William heard the echo of his own guilt in her words. Sacrifice. Duty. The weight of protecting the people you loved, even when it cost you everything else. He'd be proud of you, William said. Jade's eyes glistened. I hope so. And the next afternoon, William came home to chaos. Not loud chaos, his daughters didn't do loud, but Mrs. Kowalski was wringing her hands in the foyer, and Jade was kneeling in the music room with all 3 girls pressed against her, Phoebe crying silently into her shoulder. What happened? William's voice came out sharp. Jade looked up, face pale. I'm so sorry, Mr. Smith. I didn't mean, I was playing and I forgot. Mrs. Kowalski stepped forward. She played one of Marianne's favorite pieces. The girls recognized it. William's jaw clenched. Which piece? Chopin. Ballade No. 1. The one Marianne had played on their wedding day. The one she'd played every anniversary. The one she'd been humming the morning she died. He looked at Jade, who seemed on the verge of tears herself. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have asked what music to avoid. I didn't think... It's fine, William interrupted. It's not fine. I upset them. They need to remember her, he said, voice rough. They can't run from the grief forever. Phoebe pulled back from Jade's shoulder and looked at William. Her small face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were clearer than he'd seen in months. She opened her mouth. No sound came out, but she mouthed something. A single word. Mama. William's knees almost buckled. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to the floor beside them. Phoebe turned to him, hesitant, then leaned forward and rested her forehead against his chest. Brooke and Crystal followed. All 3 girls, arms around their father for the first time since the funeral. William held them, eyes burning, throat locked. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only hold on and pray he didn't break apart. Over their heads, his eyes met Jade's. She was crying. Silent tears tracking down her face, but she was smiling. And in that moment, William felt something shift inside his chest. Something dangerous and inevitable. He needed this woman. Not just for his daughters. For himself. That night, after the girls were asleep, William knocked on Jade's bedroom door. She opened it, surprised. "Mr. Smith? Is everything—" "I'm raising your salary," he said abruptly. $1,200 a week. Jade blinked. "What? No, that's too much." "It's not enough," he interrupted. "You're not just housekeeping. You're bringing my daughters back to life. $1,200. Non-negotiable." "Mr. Smith—" "William," he said. "You can call me William." She stared at him, something unreadable flickering across her face. "Okay," she said softly. "William." Hearing his name in her voice did something to him. Made the walls he'd built feel flimsy. He turned and left before he did something stupid. Like tell her she was the first good thing to happen to this house in over a year. Like tell her that when she smiled at his daughters, he felt like maybe he hadn't completely destroyed everything. Like tell her he was terrified of how much he'd come to depend on her in just 2 months. In his study, William drank scotch and tried to convince himself this was fine. She was an employee, a very effective employee, that's all. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her kneeling on the music room floor, holding his broken daughters, crying for them like they were her own. And he knew he was lying to himself. April brought rain and the first real crack in William's control. It started with Crystal. She'd been drawing more, pages and pages of crayon sketches that she left scattered around the house like breadcrumbs. Jade collected them carefully, storing them in a folder she kept in her room. Family portraits, the piano, the garden, and increasingly portraits of Jade herself. Jade reading, Jade playing piano, Jade laughing at something Brooke had done. William found one on his desk one morning. He didn't know how it had gotten there. Crystal must have snuck in during the night. The drawing showed 5 figures, 3 small girls, 1 woman, and 1 tall man standing slightly apart. But in this picture, the man wasn't in the corner. He was holding the woman's hand. William stared at it for a long time, something hot and uncomfortable coiling in his chest. The girls had started following Jade everywhere, not just during work hours. They'd wait by her bedroom door in the mornings, silent and patient until she emerged. They'd hold her hands during walks in the garden. Phoebe had started sleeping with one of Jade's scarves, the soft fabric clutched in her small fist. "They're attached," Mrs. Kowalski said one afternoon, watching the girls help Jade fold laundry. "I've never seen anything like it." William had. He'd seen it with Marianne. The thought should have comforted him. Instead, it filled him with creeping dread. Because Jade wasn't Marianne. Jade was an employee. Temporary. She could leave whenever she wanted. And if she left, his daughters would shatter all over again. On a Thursday evening, Marco showed up at the mansion unannounced. William met him in the study, irritation already simmering. "I told you not to come here. We have a problem, boss." Marco's face was grim. Volkov's sniffing around again. One of our guys spotted his lieutenant at the Brooklyn docks yesterday. William's blood went cold. "Doing what?" "Asking questions. About you. About your family." The word family hung in the air like a threat. "He knows the girls are here. William said flatly. Probably. We kept it quiet after Marianne, but 14 months is a long time. Word gets out. Marco hesitated. Boss, if he's circling back, I'll handle it. How? You've barely been to the warehouse in 2 months. The guys are starting to talk. They think you've gone soft. William's hand slammed onto the desk. I don't give a damn what they think. Marco raised his hands. I'm not criticizing. I'm telling you what. I'm hearing. Volkov's testing boundaries. If he thinks you're weak. I'm not weak. Then prove it. Come back. Be visible. Remind everyone who runs this city. William wanted to argue, wanted to say his daughters needed him here. But Marco was right. Absence bred opportunity. And if Volkov thought William was vulnerable, he'd strike. Fine, William said. Set up a meeting with the Italians. Tomorrow night. Marco nodded, relief crossing his face. Good. That's good. After he left, William sat, in the dark study, head in his hands. He couldn't be in 2 places at once. Couldn't protect his empire and his daughters simultaneously. But if he lost the empire, he lost everything, including the power to keep his daughters safe. Jade noticed the shift immediately. William started leaving earlier, coming home later. When he was home, he was distracted, curt answers, barely looking at the girls during dinner, disappearing into his study for hours. The girls noticed too. They'd started waiting by the window in the evenings, watching for his car. When he finally arrived, they'd hover near his study door, uncertain. He never invited them in. One night, after William had been locked in his study for 3 hours, Jade found Crystal sitting on the floor outside the door, knees pulled to her chest. Sweetheart, Jade whispered, kneeling beside her. What are you doing? Crystal pointed at the door. You want to see your dad? A nod. Okay, let's knock. Crystal's eyes widened, terrified. It's, okay, Jade said gently. He won't be angry. She knocked softly. What? William's voice was sharp. Jade opened the door a crack. He was at his desk, papers everywhere, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. He looked exhausted. Crystal wanted to see you, Jade said quietly. William's expression flickered. Guilt, frustration, something else. I'm working. I know. But she's been waiting out here for an hour. He looked past Jade to where Crystal stood in the hallway, small and silent and heartbreakingly hopeful. William's jaw worked. Then he pushed back from the desk. Come here, Piccola. Crystal walked in slowly, clutching Mr. Whiskers. She stopped in front of her father's chair, staring up at him. William lifted her onto his lap. She curled against his chest immediately, head tucked under his chin. He held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, and closed his eyes. Jade backed out and closed the door silently. The change in William's schedule created a void, and Jade filled it without being asked. She started staying later, helping the girls with dinner, supervising bath time, reading stories before bed. Mrs. Kowalski's back was getting worse, and Jade insisted she rest while Jade handled evening routines. It felt natural, right, too right. Because late at night, after the girls were asleep, Jade would lie in her small room and think about William's face when he held Crystal. The vulnerability there, the fear. She'd think about the way his voice softened when he said her name. The way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Jade knew she was crossing lines. Employees didn't feel this way about their bosses, didn't lie awake wondering what those dark eyes would look like without the weight of grief in them. But she couldn't seem to stop. The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday in late April. William had been gone for 2 days, some kind of business trip Marco had arranged. The girls were restless, anxious. Phoebe had nightmares both nights. waking up screaming silently, and only calmed when Jade held her. When William finally returned, it was nearly midnight. Jade was in the kitchen making tea, unable to sleep herself. She heard the front door open, footsteps in the foyer. Then William appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked like hell. His suit was rumpled, tie gone, dark circles under his eyes. There was a cut on his cheekbone, fresh, angry red. "You're hurt," Jade said, setting down, her mug. "It's nothing. Let me see." "I said it's nothing." But his voice cracked on the last word, and Jade saw it then, the fracture. The barely held control splintering. She crossed to him slowly. "William, let me help." He stared at her, and for a moment she thought he'd push her away. Then he exhaled, shoulders sagging. Jade wet a clean towel and gently cleaned the cut. He didn't flinch, just watched her face with unnerving intensity. "What happened?" she asked softly. "A disagreement." "Did you win?" A ghost of a smile. "Always." But his hands were shaking. Jade caught them, held them still. "The girls missed you," she said. "I know. They need you here." "I know that too." His voice was raw. "But if I'm here, I lose control out there. And if I lose control out there, we're all in danger." "From who?" His eyes hardened. "People who want what I have. People who'd use my daughters to get to me." Jade's stomach twisted. "The man who killed your wife." William didn't answer. Didn't need to. "So you're choosing," Jade said slowly, "between being their father and being whatever you are out there." "I don't have a choice." "You do," she insisted. "You could walk away, leave that world, keep them safe by being poor, powerless. You think that keeps them safe?" His voice rose. "My enemies don't forget, Jade. I could move to Alaska and they'd still find me. The only thing keeping my daughters alive is the fact that I'm still feared. The second I show weakness..." "They're 5 years old." Jade's voice broke. "They don't need you to be feared. They need you to read them bedtime stories and tell them you love them and be there." "I can't be both." "Then choose them." The words hung between them, sharp and desperate. William stared at her, chest heaving. Then his hands came up, framing her face. Jade's breath stopped. "You don't understand," he whispered. "You're asking me to give up everything I've built. I'm asking you to build something better." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. It's just not easy." He laughed bitterly. "You have no idea what you're asking. Then tell me. Explain it. Make me understand why your daughters should lose another parent because you're too afraid to..." He kissed her. Hard. Desperate. Completely, without finesse. His hands tight in her hair, body pressed against hers, kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Jade froze for one shocked heartbeat. Then she kissed him back. It was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. He was her employer. She was here for his daughters. This couldn't happen. But his mouth was hot and desperate on hers, and she felt the loneliness in him, the same loneliness that lived in her chest. And she couldn't pull away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, William's forehead dropped against hers. "This is a mistake," he said. "I know. You should quit. Leave before..." "I'm not leaving those girls." His hands tightened on her waist. "Then we can't do this again." "Okay." But neither of them moved. Upstairs, a door creaked. Small footsteps on the stairs. They jerked apart. Crystal appeared in the kitchen doorway. Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest, eyes wide. She looked at her father, then at Jade. Then she turned and ran back upstairs. Jade's heart plummeted. "Crystal, wait!" But the little girl was gone. William swore viciously. She saw us. I'll talk to her. I'll explain. Explain what? His voice was harsh. That her father can't keep his hands to himself? That I'm replacing her mother with the help? The words hit like a slap. That's not what this is, Jade said quietly. Isn't it? William stepped back, face shuddering. Go to bed, Miss Wilson. We'll discuss this in the morning. Miss Wilson. Back to that. Jade left without another word. In her room, she pressed her back against the door and tried to catch her breath. What had she done? She didn't sleep. At dawn, she went to check on the girls. Their shared bedroom was empty. Panic spiked through her chest. She ran downstairs, calling their names. She found them in the music room, all three sitting on the sofa, staring at the piano, just like the day she'd arrived. Silent, withdrawn, locked away. Girls? Jade's voice shook. What's wrong? Crystal didn't look at her. Neither did Brooke or Phoebe. They'd shut down completely. And Jade understood with horrible clarity. They'd seen the kiss, seen their father and Jade together. And they thought she was replacing their mother. The progress of 4 months destroyed in a single moment. Jade sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. The girls didn't react, didn't hum, didn't look at her. They were gone again. William found Jade still on her knees in the music room an hour later, the girls silent statues on the sofa. His face was unreadable. Pack your things. Jade looked up, tears drying on her cheeks. What? You're fired. I want you gone by noon. The words landed like bullets. No. Jade stood, shaking. No, you can't. The girls are fine. They're not fine. Look at them. She gestured desperately at the 3 small figures. They've regressed completely because they saw us. Because you forgot your place. William interrupted coldly. This is my fault. I never should have blurred those lines. William, please. It's Mr. Smith, and you're done here. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. 2 months severance. More than fair. Jade stared at the envelope like it was a snake. I don't want your money. I want to help them. You've done enough. The cruelty in his voice made her flinch. This was the man the city feared. Not the father who'd held Crystal in his study. Not the broken widower who'd kissed her like he was starving. This was the Mafia boss, cold and untouchable. They need me, Jade said desperately. They'll adapt. They won't. You're making the same mistake you made before, pushing away anyone who gets too close, anyone who threatens your control. Get out. His voice was lethal quiet. Now. Jade's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him he was destroying his daughters all over again, but she couldn't force him to let her stay. She looked at the girls one last time. Crystal's eyes were closed. Brooke was rocking slightly. Phoebe clutched her stuffed rabbit so tight her knuckles were white. I love you, Jade whispered. All 3 of you. I'm so sorry. No response. She walked past William without looking at him and went upstairs to pack. Mrs. Kowalski found her 20 minutes later, throwing clothes into her duffel with shaking hands. Jade, what happened? William said you're leaving. He fired me. What? Why? Jade couldn't answer, couldn't explain. Just shook her head and kept packing. Her aunt sat on the bed, face creased with worry. The girls... I know. Jade's voice broke. I know what this will do to them. But he won't listen. Let me talk to him. Don't, please. He's made up his mind. Mrs. Kowalski was quiet for a moment. Then, did something happen between you two? Jade's hand stilled. Her aunt sighed. I've seen the way he looks at you, the way you look at him. I was afraid. It was one kiss, Jade whispered. One stupid, selfish kiss. And Crystal saw. Now they think I'm trying to replace their mother and they've shut down again and... Her voice dissolved into sobs. Mrs. Kowalski pulled her into a fierce hug. Oh, honey, men like William, they don't know how to handle softness. They only understand control, and you scared him. I didn't mean to. I know, but that doesn't change what he is. Jade was gone by 11:30. She stood in the foyer one last time, duffel over her shoulder, looking at the grand staircase. Somewhere up there, 3 little girls who'd learned to trust her were locked in silence. William stood in his study doorway, watching. Expressionless. I hope you know what you're doing, Jade said quietly. I always do. She wanted to argue, wanted to beg one more time. Instead, she walked out the front door and didn't look back. The first week without Jade, the girls didn't eat. Mrs. Kowalski tried everything, their favorite meals, treats, gentle coaxing. They'd sit at the table, staring at their plates, then push the food away untouched. Phoebe stopped humming. Brooke stopped using gestures. Crystal stopped drawing. They were ghosts again, worse than before, because now they knew what they'd lost. William told himself they'd adjust. Children were resilient. They'd forget about Jade eventually. But on the 8th day, when he came home to find Phoebe so pale Mrs. Kowalski was threatening to call a doctor, he started to wonder if he'd made a catastrophic mistake. She's barely had water, his housekeeper said, voice sharp with accusation. None of them have. They're grieving, William. He didn't correct her use of his first name. Didn't have the energy. That night, he sat in the girls' room while they lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I know you're angry with me, he said quietly. I know you miss Jade, but she had to go. No response. She cared about you very much, but sometimes people can't stay, even when we want them to. Crystal turned her back to him. The rejection cut deeper than he'd expected. On day 10, Marco showed up with news. Volkov made his move. Hit one of our shipments at, the port. Took out 3 of our guys. William's blood went cold. When? 2 hours ago. He's sending a message, boss. He knows you've been distracted. I haven't been distracted. Marco's look said otherwise. He's going to keep pushing until you push back. We need to respond. Hard. William thought of his daughters upstairs, starving themselves because he'd been too much of a coward to face his own feelings. He thought of Jade's face when he'd handed her that envelope. You're asking me to build something better. It is simple. It's just not easy. Set up a meeting, William said. With Volkov? No, with our suppliers, our allies, everyone who matters. I'm making an announcement. Marco frowned. What kind of announcement? William stood, decision crystallizing. The kind that changes everything. The call came at 2 a.m. Jade jolted awake in her tiny studio apartment, heart pounding. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Hello? Jade? Mrs. Kowalski's voice, thick with tears. You need to come back. Jade sat up. What happened? Are the girls... They won't eat. Won't drink. Phoebe collapsed this afternoon. The doctor said if they don't start eating soon, he'll have to hospitalize them. Jade's hand shook. Put William on. He's not here. He's at some meeting. He doesn't even know how bad it is. Then why are you calling me? He fired me. Because those girls are dying without you, Jade. Slowly, but surely. And I can't stand by and watch it happen. Jade closed her eyes. She'd been trying so hard to move on, trying to convince herself she'd done all she could. But the thought of Phoebe, tiny, Gentle Phoebe, collapsing. "I'll be there in an hour." The mansion was dark when Jade arrived. Mrs. Kowalski let her in, relief flooding her face. "They're upstairs. I told them you were coming. I don't know if they heard me, but—" Jade didn't wait. She took the stairs 2 at a time and pushed open their bedroom door. All 3 girls were in bed, exactly as she'd left them 10 days ago. Pale, thin, lifeless. But when Jade stepped into the room, Crystal's eyes opened. She stared at Jade like she was seeing a ghost. "I'm here," Jade whispered, kneeling beside the bed. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm here now." Crystal sat up slowly. Then Brooke, then Phoebe. They looked at her with identical expressions: hurt, hope, fear of hoping. "I know you're angry," Jade said, voice breaking. "I know I hurt you, but I promise I'm not trying to replace your mom. I could never replace her. I love you. All 3 of you. And I'm not leaving again unless you want me to." Phoebe's lip trembled. Then she opened her mouth and said, in a voice rusty from disuse, "Stay." The word was barely a whisper, but it was a word. Jade burst into tears. "I'll stay, I promise." All 3 girls launched themselves at her, arms wrapping tight around her neck, faces buried in her hair. And for the first time in 10 days they cried, loud, gasping, painful sobs that shook their small bodies. Jade held them and cried too, whispering promises she prayed she could keep. Behind her, in the doorway, William stood frozen. He'd come home to grab files he'd forgotten. He'd heard the commotion upstairs. And now he was watching Jade hold his daughters while they sobbed out 10 days of grief. Phoebe had spoken. Because of Jade. Mrs. Kowalski appeared at his elbow. "I called her," she said defiantly. "Fire me if you want, but I wasn't going to let those babies starve." William couldn't speak, could only stare at the woman he'd fired, the woman who'd come back anyway, who was currently piecing his family back together with her bare hands. The woman he'd fallen in love with and been too terrified to admit it. Jade looked up and saw him. Her face went carefully blank. "Mr. Smith." The formality cut like glass. "Miss Wilson," he managed. The girls hadn't noticed him yet, too consumed with crying. "I'll leave in the morning," Jade said, quietly. "Once they've calmed down, once they've eaten something." "No." She blinked. "What?" William stepped into the room. The girls finally saw him. Crystal's arms tightened around Jade protectively. He knelt down, meeting his daughter's wary eyes. "I made a mistake," he said, voice rough but steady. "A big one. I sent Jade away because I was scared. Scared of needing someone. Scared of losing someone else. He swallowed. "Someone important." Jade's breath hitched. William looked at her. "I was wrong. And I'm sorry. To all of you." Crystal stared at him. Then slowly, she reached out and took his hand, pulled him into the huddle. All 5 of them, tangled together on the floor of the girls' bedroom, holding on like they could keep the world out through sheer force of will. "Don't send her away again," Phoebe whispered against Jade's shoulder. "Please, Daddy." William's eyes burned. "I won't. I promise." He met Jade's gaze over his daughters' heads. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. Jade's eyes filled with fresh tears. "We'll talk later," she mouthed back. For now, this was enough. 3 days after Jade returned, Phoebe spoke her second sentence. They were in the music room, where else, and Jade was playing something soft, formless. Phoebe sat closest to the piano bench as always, Brooke and Crystal flanking her on the floor. "Miss Jade?" The voice was tiny, uncertain, but clear. Jade's hands stilled on the keys. She turned slowly. Phoebe was looking at her with those enormous green eyes. "Will you teach me to play?" Jade's throat closed. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Me too," Brooke whispered. Crystal didn't speak, but she stood and walked to the piano, placing one small hand on the wood. Jade patted the bench beside her. "Come here, all of you." They climbed up, 3 small bodies pressed against her side. Jade guided their hands to the keys, showing them middle C, how to curve their fingers, how to press gently. The sounds they made were chaotic, discordant, beautiful. From the doorway, William watched. He'd been doing that a lot, watching, trying to figure out how to exist in this new reality where his daughters spoke again, where Jade was back, where everything felt fragile and precious and terrifying. They hadn't talked yet. Not really. There'd been doctors to see, checking the girls, confirming they were physically okay despite the 10-day hunger strike. There'd been routines to reestablish, boundaries to navigate. But the conversation looming between them couldn't be avoided forever. That night, after the girls were asleep, William found Jade in the library. She was curled in the same armchair as before, but this time she was just staring into space. "Can we talk?" he asked from the doorway. She nodded without looking at him. William sat across from her, suddenly uncertain. He'd negotiated with mob bosses, stared down rivals, ordered hits without blinking. But sitting across from this woman, this gentle, stubborn, impossible woman, he felt like a boy who didn't know the rules. "I owe you an explanation," he started. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "When I fired you, I told myself it was for the girls, that they were getting too attached, that it was unhealthy. But that was a lie." Jade's eyes finally met his. "Then why did you do it?" "Because I was getting too attached." The admission cost him. "Because every time I came home and saw you with them, saw you making them smile, making them speak, I felt it. This pull, this need. And I can't afford to need people, Jade. In my world, need is a weakness someone will exploit." "Your world," Jade repeated quietly. "The world where you're..." "What, exactly?" "Mrs. Kowalski won't tell me. The internet has rumors, but nothing concrete. Who are you, William Smith?" He could lie, should lie. Instead, he told the truth. "I run the Irish syndicate in New York. Cargo operations, protection, money laundering. My father built the organization. I inherited it when he died. I'm what people call a crime lord. A mob boss. Whatever term makes it sound appropriately dangerous." Jade didn't flinch, just watched him steadily. "The man who killed your wife," she said. "Konstantin Volkov. He's Russian Mafia, my primary rival. The car bomb was retaliation for a territory dispute." William's hands clenched. He murdered Marianne to send a message. And it worked. I've spent 14 months trying to keep my daughters safe while maintaining enough control to keep Volkov from striking again. That's why you've been leaving so much. Why Marco keeps showing up. Yes. And the meeting 3 days ago, when Mrs. Kowalski called me? William exhaled slowly. I called together every major player in the 5 boroughs, told them I was stepping back from active operations. Marco's taking over day-to-day leadership. I'll consult, make strategic decisions, but I'm not going to be on the front lines anymore. Jade's eyes widened. You're leaving the organization? Not entirely. That would create a power vacuum and put us all at risk. But I'm choosing my daughters over my empire. You were right. They don't need me to be feared. They need me to be their father. What did your people say? A bitter smile. Half thought I'd lost my mind. The other half respected it. Marco said if I was going soft, at least I was doing it strategically. He paused. Volkov will see it as weakness. He'll test me. And and I'll deal with it. But I won't sacrifice my daughter's childhood to fight a war that's already cost them their mother. His voice dropped. I won't sacrifice you either. Jade's breath caught. William, I'm in love with you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you played piano for 3 silent girls and didn't give up. Maybe when you held Phoebe through her nightmares. Maybe the first day, when you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. He met her eyes. I fired you because I was terrified of what that meant. Because loving someone in my world is painting a target on their back. I'm already in your world, Jade said quietly. The moment I walked into this house, I became part of it. Firing me didn't change that. I know. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, then faded. I need to know if you can live with this, with what I am. I'm trying to be better, but I can't erase my past. I've done terrible things, Jade. I'll have to do terrible things again to keep this family safe. Jade was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. My father used to say that people aren't defined by their worst moments. They're defined by what they do after. She leaned forward. You could have stayed in your empire, could have kept choosing power over your daughters. But you didn't. You're choosing them. That matters. Does it matter enough? I don't know yet, she admitted. I need time to process all of this. The Mafia thing it's a lot. But I know I love those girls, and I know, she swallowed. I know I have feelings for you too. Complicated, messy feelings that probably violate every professional boundary that ever existed. William's heart was pounding. What kind of feelings? The kind that made me come back at 2 a.m., even though you'd broken my heart. The kind that make me want to stay even though I know I should probably run. She smiled sadly. You scare me, William. Not because you're dangerous, because of how much I care despite the danger. He wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to kiss her until neither of them could think straight. But he forced himself to stay still. What do you need from me? Honesty. Always. And time. Let's take this slow. Let the girls adjust. Figure out what this looks like without rushing. I can do slow. Can you? She raised an eyebrow. Because the last time we kissed, slow wasn't exactly your strong suit. Heat flared in his eyes. That was different. How? I was trying to convince myself I didn't want you. Now I'm trying to convince you to stay. I'm already staying. For the girls. Just the girls? Jade stood, crossing to him slowly. She stopped right in front of his chair, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her. Ask me again in a month, she whispered. Then she left the library, leaving William sitting there with hope burning in his chest like a brand. The month that followed was the strangest of William's life. By day, he was present in a way he hadn't been since before Marianne's death. He had breakfast with the girls every morning, came home by 6 every evening, read bedtime stories in different voices that made them giggle. Phoebe spoke more each day, full sentences now, questions and observations tumbling out in her soft voice. Brooke was slower but steady, carefully choosing her words. Crystal remained the quietest, but she'd started whispering too. William at bedtime, secrets meant only for him, and Jade was there through all of it. Not as a nanny anymore. William had officially changed her title to family consultant, which made her laugh, but as something more integral. She taught the girls piano every afternoon, helped with homework, mediated the tiny arguments that cropped up between siblings learning to communicate again. She and William orbited each other carefully, sitting together during the girls' piano lessons, talking over coffee. after bedtime, learning each other in increments. He told her about his childhood, his father's brutality, his mother's quiet strength before cancer took her, the moment at 17 when he'd had to choose between college and the family business. She told him about her mother leaving when she was 8, about her father raising her alone while working 2 jobs, about the scholarship that had been her ticket out and the funeral debt that had dragged her back. They didn't kiss again, didn't touch, beyond accidental hand brushes and careful distances, but the tension built like a storm-gathering force. The breakthrough with Crystal came on a Sunday afternoon in early May. The girls were drawing at the kitchen table while Jade made lunch. William sat nearby, ostensibly reading the newspaper, but mostly just watching his daughters exist in peaceful domesticity. Crystal pushed a piece of paper across the table toward him. It was a family portrait. 5 figures this time. 3 small girls. 1 woman, 1 man. And they were all holding hands in a circle. At the top, in careful crayon letters, "Our family William's throat closed." Crystal was watching him with those 2 old eyes. "Is that okay, Daddy?" First time she'd asked his permission for anything in 14 months. "It's perfect, Piccola," he managed. "Even Miss Jade?" He looked across the kitchen to where Jade stood frozen at the counter, tears streaming silently down her face. "Especially Miss Jade," William said. Crystal smiled, real, genuine, the smile that had been missing since the bomb. She slid off her chair and walked to Jade, taking her hand. "Don't cry," she whispered. "You're home now." Jade knelt and pulled Crystal into a fierce hug, then opened her arms for Brooke and Phoebe, who rushed over immediately. Over their heads, her eyes met William's. "A month," she mouthed. He smiled. "I'm counting." But the universe had other plans. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, William came home to find Marco's car in the driveway. His underboss met him at the door, face grim. "We have a situation." William's blood went cold. "Volkov?" "He grabbed one of our couriers. Kid named Tommy, only 19. He's holding him at a warehouse in Queens, wants a trade." "For what?" Marco hesitated. "He wants a meeting. Just you and him. Says if you don't show, he'll send Tommy back in pieces." William's jaw clenched. "It's a trap. Obviously. But if you don't go, he'll kill the kid. Then he'll escalate. You know how this works." He did. Volkov was testing him, seeing if the rumors about William going soft were true. "When?" "Tonight. Midnight." William checked his watch. 6:30. The girls would be expecting dinner at 7. Bedtime stories at 8. Jade appeared from the kitchen, smile fading when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" "Business," William said shortly. "Marco, give me a minute." His underboss stepped outside. Jade crossed her arms. "You're going to do something dangerous." "I have, too." "No, you don't. You said you were stepping back." "A kid's life is on the line." "So, call the police." William almost laughed. "The police don't help people like Tommy. And even if they did, involving them would start a war that would get dozens more killed. Then send Marco. Send someone else. Volkov wants me. If I don't show, he'll assume I'm weak. That opens the door for every rival to start pushing boundaries. More people die. Possibly people in this house." Jade's face went pale. "You think he'd come here?" "If he thought he could get away with it." "Yes." William stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is what I meant, Jade. This is the world I live in. Sometimes I have to do terrible things to prevent worse things. So you're going to walk into an obvious trap." "I'm going to negotiate. Marco will have men positioned as backup. It'll be fine." "You can't promise that." "No," he admitted. "I can't." From the kitchen, Phoebe's voice called. "Daddy! Miss Jade! Dinner's ready." William closed his eyes briefly, then opened them and looked at Jade. "I have to go, but I'll be back for breakfast. I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep," Jade whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, first time he'd touched her in weeks. "I've kept every promise I've made to my daughters since you came back. I'm not breaking that streak now." He kissed her forehead, brief and gentle. Then he went to have dinner with his girls, pretending everything was fine. 11:45, William pulled on his jacket and checked his weapon. Marco was waiting downstairs. Jade appeared in his study doorway. She'd put the girls to bed an hour ago. "If you don't come back—" Her voice broke. "What do I tell them?" "I'm coming back. William—" He crossed to her, pulled her against him, and kissed her. Deep, desperate, pouring 14 months of grief and 6 weeks of yearning into it. When he pulled back, her eyes were wet. "I love you," he said. "I should have said it before. I'm saying it now. I love you, Jade Wilson, and I'm coming home to you." "You better," she whispered fiercely. "Because I love you too, you idiot, and if you die in some warehouse, I'll never forgive you." He smiled against her hair. "Noted." One more kiss. Then he left. The warehouse was exactly as bleak as William expected. Concrete floors, rusted metal beams, the smell of salt water from the nearby docks. Volkov stood in the center, flanked by 4 of his men. Tommy, a skinny kid, with terror in his eyes, knelt on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back. "Mr. Smith," Volkov said in his heavy Russian accent. "So good of you to come. Let the kid go. You wanted me. Here I am." "Ah, but that would be too simple, yes?" Volkov smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I hear you've been making changes. Stepping back from business. Spending time with family. Very touching." William kept his face neutral. "What do you want, Constantine?" "I want to know if the rumors are true. If the great William Smith has finally grown a conscience." He gestured to Tommy. "This boy works for you, carries your packages, and you came here alone to save him. That is not the action of a ruthless man." "I'm not alone," William said quietly. "And you know it." Volkov's smile widened. "Your men are positioned on the rooftops, yes. I have men in the sewers. We are at what you Americans call a Mexican standoff." He pulled a gun from his jacket. "So let us test your newfound morality. I will kill this boy unless you kneel." William's jaw clenched. "What?" "Kneel. Beg for his life. Show me that William Smith has become weak." Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to shoot Volkov where he stood and deal with the consequences. But he thought of 3 little girls sleeping peacefully in their beds. He thought of Jade's face when she'd said, "I love you too." And he thought of Tommy, 19 years old, terrified, about to die because he'd taken a job with the wrong people. William knelt. Volkov's eyes widened with genuine shock. Then he laughed. "Incredible! The great boss, on his knees." "Let him go," William said steadily. "You made your point." "Oh, I don't think I have." Volkov aimed the gun at Tommy's head. "Because a weak boss is a dead boss. And I think perhaps it is time for new leadership in—" The shot cracked through the warehouse. Volkov's gun clattered to the floor. Marco stepped out of the shadows, rifle still trained. "I don't think so." Chaos erupted. Volkov's men reached for weapons. William was moving before they could draw, tackling Tommy to the ground and shielding him with his body. Gunfire echoed, shouting in Russian and English. Then silence. When William looked up, Volkov was on the ground, Marco's boot on his chest, surrounded by William's men. "Still think I'm weak?" William asked quietly. Volkov spat blood. "You knelt." "I did. because that kid's life mattered more than my pride. William stood, helping Tommy up and cutting his zip. Ties. That's not weakness, Constantine. That's evolution. Something you'd understand if you were smart. He nodded to Marco. Get him out of here. Make sure he understands this territory is closed. Marco grinned. With pleasure, boss. William turned and walked out, leaving his men to handle cleanup. He'd promised his daughters he'd be home for breakfast. He had 5 hours to make good on that promise. Jade was sitting on the front steps when William's car pulled up at 6 a.m. She ran to him, before he'd even cut the engine, throwing herself into his arms the moment he stepped out. You're okay, she gasped. You're okay. He held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. Told you I'd come back. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. She pulled back, smacking his chest. Then promise you'll always come back. That I can do. He kissed her, soft and deep and full of promises. Behind them, the front door opened. 3 small voices shrieked, Daddy! Crystal, Brooke, and Phoebe came running, still in their pajamas, launching themselves at William's legs. He scooped all 3 up, barely, they were getting big, and held them close. You're home, Phoebe said happily. You promised. I did, and I always keep my promises. Crystal pulled back, looking at him seriously. Are you done with the bad things now? William glanced at Jade, who was watching with tears in her eyes. I'm trying, he told his daughter honestly. It's going to take time, but I'm trying. Okay, Crystal said, then quieter. We'll help. His heart cracked open. Yeah? Yeah, we're a family. Families help each other. She looked at Jade. Right, Miss Jade? Jade crouched down, joining their huddle. Right. Families stick together. Brooke tugged on William's shirt. Are you and Miss Jade getting married? William choked on air. We haven't... That's... Because we drew pictures, Phoebe announced. You're supposed to marry people you love, and we love Miss Jade. And you love Miss Jade, so you should get married. Jade was bright red. Girls, it's complicated. Why? Crystal asked with devastating 5-year-old logic. William looked at Jade. She looked back, helpless laughter in her eyes. Your daughters make a compelling argument, she said. They really do. He set the girls down gently. But Miss Jade and I need to talk about this privately first, okay? Grown-up decisions take time. But you'll think about it? Phoebe pressed. Every single day, William promised. The girls seemed satisfied with that. They ran inside, already planning their next piano lesson. William and Jade stood alone in the driveway as the sun rose over New York. So, Jade said, marriage proposals from your 5-year-olds. That's a new one. They're very goal-oriented. He pulled her close. But they're not wrong. I do love you. And when you're ready, whenever you're ready, I'm going to ask you properly. With a ring and everything. Properly? She smiled. You, the Mafia, boss, are going to get down on one knee? I've already proven I'm not too proud to kneel for what matters. Her smile softened. Yeah, you have. They stood there as the city woke around them. This impossible family built from tragedy and music and stubborn, reckless love. Come on, Jade said eventually. You promised breakfast. I'm thinking pancakes. The girls will want chocolate chips. Obviously. They walked inside together, his arm around her shoulders, her hand on his chest over his heart. In the kitchen, 3 little girls were already pulling out ingredients, chattering excitedly about their day, their piano lesson, their plans to teach Daddy how to play Twinkle Twinkle. And for the first time in 14 months, the Smith house was full of sound and life and possibility. 6 months later, the music room had been repainted, Soft yellow walls, new curtains, photos on the mantel. Marianne's memory honored but no longer haunting. Jade sat at the piano, playing something. She'd composed herself. A melody that started sad and slow, but built into something hopeful. Crystal, Brooke, and Phoebe sat on the floor, drawing. They talked now. Constant, enthusiastic chatter about everything and nothing. They still had nightmares sometimes. Still had hard days when grief hit unexpectedly. But they were healing. William stood in the doorway, watching. He'd officially stepped down from active leadership of the syndicate last month. Marco ran operations. William consulted, remotely, and handled high-level strategy. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still moments when violence knocked on their door. But he came home every night, read bedtime stories, kissed his daughters goodnight, and he was learning to play piano. Badly. But Jade said effort mattered more than skill. As if sensing his presence, Jade looked over her shoulder and smiled. That smile still undid him every time. She finished the piece and stood. "All right, ladies. Practice time." The girls groaned, but climbed onto the bench, taking turns playing their exercises. William crossed the room and wrapped his arms around Jade from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "I have something for you," he murmured. "Yeah?" He pulled the small box from his pocket and held it in front of her. Jade went very still. "The girls were right," William said quietly. "We should get married. Not because it's logical or expected, but because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to make this official. I want—" Jade turned in his arms and kissed him before he could finish. When she pulled back, she was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you impossible man. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, simple platinum band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious. Perfect. The girls had stopped playing. They were staring with matching expressions of delight. "Did she say yes?" Phoebe Stage whispered. "She said yes," William confirmed. They shrieked and launched themselves at the couple, wrapping around their legs in a tangle of limbs and laughter. "We're going to be a real family," Brooke announced. "We already are," Jade said, pulling them all close. "We've been a family for a while now." Crystal looked up at her father. "Are you happy, Daddy?" William looked at Jade, this woman who'd walked into his broken house and pieced them all back together with music and patience and love. He looked at his daughters, speaking, laughing, alive in ways he'd thought lost forever. "Yeah, Piccola," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I'm happy." And he meant it. Epilogue. 1 year later. The wedding was small, just family and a few close friends in the garden of the Smith mansion on a perfect June afternoon. Crystal, Brooke, and Phoebe served as flower girls, wearing matching lavender dresses they'd picked out themselves. They walked down the aisle with solemn importance, scattering rose petals. Mrs. Kowalski cried through the entire ceremony. Marco stood as best man, looking uncomfortable in a tux but grinning anyway. And when William kissed his bride, their 3 daughters cheered louder than anyone. At the reception, Jade played piano while the girls sang, a song they'd written together about families that choose each other. There was no mention of Mafia business, no shadow of the violence that still existed in the margins of their life. Just music and laughter and light. That night, after the guests had left and the girls were, finally, reluctantly, asleep, William found his wife on the terrace. "Mrs. Smith," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him. "I'm keeping Wilson professionally, but I like the sound of that. Say it again. Mrs. Smith." He kissed her neck. Again. She laughed, turning in his arms. "You're ridiculous. I'm happy, he corrected. There's a difference. Jade sobered, reaching up to touch his face. Are you really? Even with everything that's still complicated? Especially because it's complicated, William said. Because we fought for this. Because those 3 girls in there learned to speak again. Because you stayed when anyone sane would have run. He rested his forehead against hers. Yeah, Jade, I'm really happy. She kissed him soft and slow, the kind of kiss that promised tomorrow and the day after, and all the days beyond that. Inside the house, a piano sat waiting. 3 small pairs of pajamas hung in the closet. A family portrait, painted by Crystal, hung in the hallway, showing 5 figures holding hands under a sky full of stars. And in the music room, on the piano's music desk, a single sheet of paper with Phoebe's careful handwriting. Sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, and sometimes the scariest people have the biggest hearts. Thank you for choosing us, Miss Jade. We love you. Crystal, Brooke, and Phoebe. Love wasn't simple in the Smith household, but it was real. And it was enough. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expected. Sometimes they're the ones the world told us to fear. But love doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't follow rules. It just shows up in the darkest places and refuses to leave, even when staying is the hardest thing in the world. If this story touched something inside you, drop a comment with your thoughts. We read every single one. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. And subscribe to Redemption Through Shadows because we bring you new emotional journeys every day. Before you go, check out the next video or dive into our playlist for more stories of love, loss, and the courage to rebuild. Thank you for being here with us. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, and remember, the strongest thing you'll ever do is choose love when everything tells you to choose fear. Good night.